The first one is we want to get a sense of if we were to project where we are now, how much money would we need to be able to continue expanding our businesses? So we assume that this year we have 100 sites or 100 students, whichever one, and maybe in 5 years' time we want to have 600. So the purpose of the session is to say if I want to have 600 children, how many sites? What do I need? How much money do I need? The second one is we live in a world of assumptions. We live in a world where so much is unclear, and a lot of it is based on what we feel and directionally accurate. And I think this is quite an important point. In our spaces, because some things don't actually have numerical values to them, what we need to be able to do in our different spaces to sustain is come up with directionally accurate assumptions and projections. Not absolutely perfect, but directionally accurate, because 9 out of 10, when you look at your financials that way, you tend to find that if you did have the absolute numbers, you'd be 5 or 10% off, which is better than being nowhere. Then we also want to better understand what are our true cost drivers and what are our real income generation opportunities or things that we already have that generate income or potentially can generate income. And then we find we need to collectively, and this is probably one of the most difficult things. The fourth point is around finding a way to determine the financial value of what I would call hidden or unknown costs. There are lots of things where we get given things. Sometimes we have to do them ourselves, and we struggle in our spaces to find a way to put a value to that. But yet it is a cost because when it moves out, to substitute it, we might have to buy something in or get some resource to do it, which costs money. And then identify practical steps to strengthen our financial planning process. So, and I think this is quite important. We're all at different stages of our financial journey. The purpose of this community of practice is to take you from wherever you are now to the next level, which means some of us will still be unable to complete views on everything. We might not know cost for everything, but the idea is to move forward 2 or 3 steps because of this process. Okay. So with that in mind, we're going to spend the next couple of minutes just introducing ourselves and recapping. Then we're going to get into the crux of why we're here today. And I know that many of you have looked at the income statement or received the income statement. Some of you might have looked at it and it shocked you. So you thought this is overwhelming. Let me find something else to do. That's also okay, because today we're going to spend some time unpacking that. And then we're also going to give you some time to actually work through your organization's real example. And the idea is when we have that working through individually or in groups, depending on how many people they are from an organization, the idea is to work through, ask some questions, work through, and because the important thing is to make sure that the template that has been designed is usable. What I can say at a theoretical level, the template is very usable. However, the template is designed for every single possible situation, which might not reflect all of us, but it allows anyone, irrespective of the size of their business, the complexity of their business, to use the same template. So working through it as at an individual organization perspective becomes important because we can help guide you with what's important for your organization. What are the things that you need to make sure you're able to use this opportunity for? So let's get started. And our icebreaker for today is to get started, we need you to share your name and your organization as you share back with us. And we'd like everyone to participate in this particular exercise. One thing that you are currently doing that helps you manage money better in your place of work. So it could be a tool, it could be a habit. And when I say tool, it might not be a tool with a name. It might be a tool or process you have that you use as an organization, okay? So it doesn't have to be published somewhere or whatever. It could be a person, that helps you with something, or a practice that the organization has, or anything else. What we really want to know is what's the one thing that helps you manage money better in your organization. So I'll give us a few minutes to be able to think about that. And then I would like, within sort of in a 30 seconds time, to have a volunteer that can start. And then we just go around the room sharing what we've been using as the right tool to help us, or the right process or thing that helps us manage money. Okay. So when 20 seconds is up, I will probably call a name. So it's always helpful when someone volunteers.
I should volunteer. May I?
Oh, go for it, Kadim.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Though this is just very soon, here will be Azan, Iftari. So I would be for a while with you, and then I go for Iftari and then we'll come back. I will try to. Ramadan, if you know, any one of you, if you observing, otherwise I'm. So thank you so much for the opportunity. So Khadim Hussain from Grace Association, Pakistan. And the tool Sen is asking, we use financial policy that guide and help us to save our money and keep things on track if we follow strictly. And at the same time, the accountant and financial team, they should understand and follow it strictly, and the whole process, it explains in the financial policy. Thank you so much. Over to you, Sen.
Thank you very much. Who would like to go after Kadim? Anyone? And also, if you don't have a tool or process that's used, that's also important to know.
All right, my name is Samuel Yabwa.
Hi, Samuel.
I'm with Teaching Well Ghana. So our tool is similar to what the earlier person discussed. We also have a financial policy, and then as part of cutting down costs, we make sure that for most expenses we collect invoices and then compare to get the best. We have also created a database of suppliers where we can always reach out to and then get best prices to choose from. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Semenda.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Daniel here from Makasesio Foundation. And at our ECED Center, we have a financial management tool, and we have a contact person, the finance, who's in charge of recording payments which are received from our ECED Center. And this tool is updated on a daily basis, and reports are shared with the team by the closure of every week. So we have used the tool to manage the finances, to track the payments, and this has supported in fees compliance over the years. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Who would like to go next?
Could I go?
Imani.
Yes, this is Imani Enoch from PAL Network. So we have a system called Zero Counting System, whereby we track all our payments and expenditures, but also we have standard operating procedures, as one of us mentioned, and then we have budget templates, especially when you go to the field. You do an impress request and impress retirement. So some of these templates help us guide and are supported by these financial documents. Thank you, and back to you.
Thank you so much. Who else would like to share? I see there's several people. Andrew, Gloria. Those of you who have just joined us, we are on this question of understanding what's the one thing that we are currently doing to be able to, that helps us manage our finances. Go for it, Bakura. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly.
Yes, thank you so much. These are French names. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm by name Narcisse Bakwa Francois, a refugee in South Sudan, Executive Director of a refugee-led organization called Youth Association for Peace and Development. Actually, we have a financial policy which help us to track and some financial uh, money, or also we have a budget template which also help us to know which donor we can also reach and talk to him to support some of our activities. And we also work closely with the parent because most of our program, as we are working on a voluntary basis, some of our key donor are parents who are supporting our school and then to see that the school is alive. So I think those are the few things, and I would like also to apologize because almost 2 weeks we have not been online because for us we are staying in the refugees camp and we have a challenge for network. So apology for that.
Thank you for joining us today. I think we're excited to have you. Okay, anyone? Andrew, Gloria, would you like to share? Joe? I'm just calling those who we haven't heard from.
Hello,
Mahad,
everyone.
okay, go for it, Gloria. Nice to have you.
Thank you. So my name is Gloria. I work with the Children Prosper, Tanzania. And in our organization, we have a comprehensive finance manual that we use, but we have strict approval procedures in country and from head office level. We also have a comprehensive budgeting process that we keep monitoring on a quarterly basis. And we focus when exchange rates fluctuate too much. So I think those are the things that help us manage our data well, manage our money well in our work.
Okay. Thank you so much. Joe, would you like to share with us? Mahad? Andrew, I see you're back. Would you like to share with us? I know you're seem to be struggling a bit with connectivity. I think someone has just joined us. Isaac, we are just talking through what we currently do in our business or organization that helps us to manage our finances. I don't know if you have anything you'd like to share with the team. We're just spending 1 minute just talking about that. If you have anything you'd like to share with us before we move on.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Isaac, we can hear you.
Thank you so much. I am representing Alistat Africa. We have our branch in Nakuru that I oversee. We have an education center called Alistat ECED Center, Nakuru. So I am the overseer there, and I thank you for coming up with this forum so that we can learn more on the planning and budgeting of our finances. For us at our school, we get finances from parents and also from donors. So thank you so much. We'll speak more.
Thank you so much, Isaac. Okay, so what I'm finding interesting, just to share, is that it seems a lot of organizations have some process, some tool, and I suppose the one thing which one would love to understand is, what would you say, and maybe you can put this in the chat, or you can speak it out before we move to recap. What would you say is the most difficult thing or the thing you're struggling with when you have a tool, have a process, have policy?
The budget, absolutely.
Sorry?
The budgeting, forecasting. The budget,
Okay.
yeah, including the forecasting as to income and expenditures.
Okay. Anything else? Yes, Amanda?
Yes, we are always affected by the fluctuations, like the change in prices. You plan for something, then after some days and months, things go up. So the budget is always affected in that too.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to ask a question there. There was one person, I think it was Imani, you mentioned that you have Zero, the accounting tool. For those of you who don't know what Zero is, it's what I would call a new age accounting tool, giving the sages of this world a hard time in terms of market penetration and market growth. But having that kind of tool, which is relatively quite sophisticated in its construct, maybe you can share with those here how you use the tool, how you have managed to get Zero to work, because we have some organizations have financial policies. They have people who are dedicated to collecting invoices, making sure payments are processed. So they have all the right things. Just sharing your experience with Zero would be nice.
Thanks, Sen. This Zero system, I think it was onboarded to us through the finance teams to help in financial management of the institution and operational work. It is just an online system, just like the way we document our day-to-day work on paper, but now this one is more systemized, and it works through the system. I feel it is more simplified because all the expenditures are loaded in Zero, all the payments are loaded in Zero, all the receivables are loaded in Zero, all the grants. So, and the payments are coded in a way that it is easy to track and easy to report also. So the documentations are all payments are also supported, and the documentation is well kept in comparison with the paperwork. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I see here, Andrew, you've made a comment about you're also using Zero and you're not in the finance department. I think a question to you would be, as someone who is, I would say, non-finance, what do you find to be one of the more difficult things as a non-financial person, and I'll assume you're in operations or something else, that you wish your finance colleagues could understand better? I don't know if you're able to. Yeah. There we are.
Yeah.
Go for
Thanks. And I believe Andrew will come in also to contribute on the challenge he has with the system. But my view with Zero has been sometimes it's good for me. It's perfectly well. I've not had any challenge as a user now that I'm not from finance. But the only challenge now comes when you don't understand its operational nature and what goes where, which requires also capacity enhancement from the team from Zero or the ICT team. But basically, it is good. It's good in reporting, and it's very nice when it comes to documentation of all the payments and everything around that. Thank you.
Andrew?
Okay, on my side, maybe I could say, as taken a member network, if Zero, all members could be using the same tool as the secretariat has taken and using, so that all the transactions could be the same. So you find that the problem is that other members are using different tools Some are using QuickBooks, some are using other. So it is difficult for maybe to organize. I mean, when they send those reports, so that they send in different forms, while they are using zero. So maybe that's could be, if you could have a uniform tool that all members of TechDen, those are reporting to TechDen, would be using the same tool as the network. Maybe that would be more valuable other than everyone is using their different tools. So when they go for supervision, they find those are using different tools apart from what they are using at the headquarters here.
Yeah.
That could be, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're touching on the point of the discussion that I thought that would come out is the one of, as operational people, what information are we feeding our finance teams? Because the financial toolkit is structured and designed in a way that an operational person who is doing the work, the assumptions that they're making in their job, the way they're collecting their information is in a way that the finance team can actually put it into a coordinated way. And I think we just hold on to that thought as we go through this process, because what's very important when we come to assumptions, the assumptions in any financial process are driven mainly by the operations people, the people doing the work. What is the assumption around the activities? How many children? What are we going to do with how many teachers we're going to have or practitioners, and how many sites and so forth. Finance just comes and collates that information. So a very big part of this is we're going to talk further about under assumptions. Okay, so a quick recap to where we are today. So we've had the 2 sessions. We spent the month of January focusing on revenue generation, one on opportunities, and secondly, on which opportunities can we actually unlock in the shorter term. Focus very much on the shorter term, but we built the thinking for how do we assess opportunities in the longer term. Then today, and then we had peer learning session, and we had one advisory office hour session where organizations, the only optional session was the advisory one, where an organization needed to book time. And thank you to those of you who did book time. The discussions were really informative and useful for us planning this process. So today we are working on financial planning and forecasting. So what have we learned so far as a quick recap? In the revenue generating, we learned about opportunities and new income stream. Excuse me for the misspelling there. But we learned more about, when we think about revenue generation and opportunities, we often look at new income streams as in completely new concepts. But if you recall, during the discussion, we were able to identify in our different spaces areas or things we could use to generate income that we've always had, like our assets, our building. If our building is working until midday, what could we do in the afternoon? Then we also said, if you want to increase income, that's great, but also we need to say, how can we reduce costs? And reducing costs was about how can we do things differently? How can we partner? Whatever it is. And maybe if we have vendors selling things, how can we ask them to pay rent for the space they use, which is something we don't typically think of, but there are many things we could do. We suddenly started opening up, and we came up with about 17 sort of core areas as a collective. Then we moved into assessing these, and this is where we understood that there are generally 6 criteria. And the 6 criteria doesn't mean these are the only criteria, but these 6 criteria will help you take any opportunity and determine whether you should focus on it. So they're the 6, call it more universal and relevant criteria. So for instance, if you recognize an opportunity, and I'll talk just about one criteria, which is target audience. If you recognize an opportunity of using the facility for parent care or parent knowledge for the children and so forth, but in your community in which you work, the parents are always working. So the people that actually take care of the children or are there are not the parents, but maybe siblings or whoever. Then you need to understand that your target audience of parents, there's some work you need to do to be able to access the parents. You need to think differently and so forth. And that's just an example of one of the criteria. Then we did our peer learning session where we learned from each other. We had organizations sharing with us their revenue opportunity they identified, and we talked a bit about the complexities around and opportunities or ways to unlock some of those things identified. And then we moved on to the last one, which was the office hours and advisory, which was very specific to each organization, where they're at, what things have they looked at. And the sessions were quite focused, and therefore we focused on certain elements. Not every opportunity, just one opportunity, and we unpacked that in quite a lot of detail. So that's where we are. So today we are understanding financial income introduction. So we're going to quickly start with the poll, because the whole idea, there's so much to talk about under financial planning, but it's good to get a sense of where we are. And I'm going to hand over to Priyanka to run us through the poll.
Sure, I've just opened a quick poll. It has about 5 or 6 questions. Maybe we can take like 30 seconds to a minute to complete that, and then I'll probably just share the results with everyone so that everyone has a sense of just where the room is. Yeah, so maybe just quickly in 30 seconds, if we can take the poll. They're all MCQ questions, so it shouldn't take a very long time to get through it. Okay, I see some results now. I was just going to check if it's visible. We have 50% responses. I'm just waiting for maybe 3 more people to submit. I'll probably end the poll in 30 seconds. Awesome. I think we have almost 80% responses, so I'll just end the poll in the interest of time. And I'm going to share the results so everyone can see it. Can you all see it? Is it visible?
It was, yeah, again.
Now?
Yes,
Great.
yes.
Okay, so I think we're all on the first question, leaning more towards there's experience in the room for building financial projections, and that the group is doing this regularly. On the second question around modeling different scenarios, I think we're leaning more towards a no as a group. On the third question around How confident do we feel in our assumptions behind the projection? I think the group is somewhere on the somewhat confident, so like the middle of the spectrum. I think it's also aligning to some of the conversations we've been having so far. So this is not much of a deviation. On the categories that are hardest for us to forecast, we have enrollment revenue growth as one, but I think inflation is the biggest one, which I think Danielle from Makasi had also kind of talked about. Cash flow timing is another one, and staff cost is also a small bucket. On the fifth question around projections and if that has sort of changed a decision in your program, it seems like a lot of us are doing financial projections, but also using that for decision making. So that's great. And how would you rate your organization's financial forecasting today? It seems like everybody is feels like they can manage the process, but with some uncertainty. And I'm guessing that's coming a lot from just lack of sort of benchmarking data and inflation and some of these problems and challenges that we've been talking about. So it was, I think, just good to kind of get a sense of where the room has been on this. So maybe now is a good time to just really jump into unpacking financial planning and forecasting a little bit more. So over to you, Sane, to lead us through some of that.
Thanks, Priyanka. So if you think about all of that, when we think about financial planning, what is the first thing that comes to mind? Anyone can just answer based on what you think. If you can just unmute yourself and speak. What comes to mind when we think financial planning and forecasting?
Daniel here.
Yes.
When it comes to financial planning, what comes first is the budget for that institution. Before I think about something else, I think about the budget, how I'm going to raise the income and how I'm going to spend it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other ideas? Okay, so I'm going to move on.
Yes,
yes, go for it, Imani.
Yes, for me, it's closely relates to what my friend has said, but also on how we support now the expenditure.
Support that?
The expenditures.
Expenditure. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So at a definition level, financial planning is a strategy of mapping your current resources against your future goals to ensure that you have the fuel, which is the financial muscle, and resources to reach your destination without running out of air at a simple level, right? So it's a combination of what is your budget and how accurate is your budget. At the same time, how accurately did you project or forecast your expenditure and expenses that you need? And that helps you plan, because that both the income that you're budgeting to bring in and the amount of expenditure in terms of cost and elements, the more accurate those, the better your financial planning can be, because you have a better sense of what do you truly need. So why financial planning is important? I think if we think about the things that have been said, is that we have a commitment of staff costs, which we always have to make, and we don't always have the money. In our environments, we have fluctuation of costs of items and uncertainty, which seems to be a challenge. But why financial planning is important is because when you have a plan that's based on the right assumptions, you can manage the uncertainties more effectively. So, and this is one thing that our financial systems, our policies do not really address. They assume a perfect world. We've got invoices from every customer. So if I think of working in this space, often when you have people that travel, even if it's the teachers that are traveling, normally there's not even an invoice from the person they've gotten to help them with transport. So now at a financial system level, you say, please bring the invoice and we'll reimburse you. Then your system, it doesn't really work for the environment in which you're operating. So these are the things. But when you think about it, financial planning helps us to work out these scenarios. So if we know we are in a fluctuating environment, how often do the scenarios, does our environment change? And therefore, can we create those fictitious scenarios and say, what will we do when we get to those type of scenarios? It also highlights where we might have higher expenditure than we have income. Therefore, what are our gaps, and guides us in terms of what do we have to do differently, which is what diversification is about. And then it informs decisions for scale. So financial planning, especially when we look at a 5-year horizon, should give us a sense of our readiness to scale and what scaling would really cost us. And I think it's important at this point to remind the collective that expansion is when you move from one site to another with 100% the same cost. So if I have one site and it costs me $500 to set up, I have 10 sites, it costs me $5,000 to set up. When it comes to scaling, setting up one site costs me $500, but setting up 10 sites would cost me $6,000, which means at some point, each site I am setting up is becoming cheaper to set up. Therefore, I am scaling. Now, when you think about that in the context of scale, what decisions do you need to make that allow costs or allow you to manage your expenses and costs over time such that the right costs reduce somewhat, so you don't invest the same amount on each individual item as you scale? That's the principle of scale. So what is an income statement? An income statement is something that shows you your profit and loss. Then within your income statement, you have something that's a balance sheet and you have cash flow. So at a definition level, and this comes directly out of your toolkit, in terms of how you use your profit and loss, which is your income statement, is it provides you a summary of all the organization's revenue, of all the organization's expenses, and then we'll say when you take your revenue and your expenses, you're left with a profit, which should be positive or negative. When it is a loss, you know you need to do something. When it is a positive, you know that you have opportunity to invest more or do more of what you're trying to do. A balance sheet gives you a snapshot of your financial position. Those of you who have visited maybe credit lenders or certain organizations, they may ask you for a balance sheet. And a balance sheet will show that if they give you money, what assets do you have, what liabilities do you have, and can you afford the financial support? So it gives a sense of the financial strength of an organization. And then cash flow is what trips us all up. What cash flow is tracking the movement of cash and in and out of an organization, ensuring that we're liquid. So in simple terms, cash flow is, do I have enough money to pay all staff members in my ECD centers every month? Often the staff members are there and there's not enough money to pay. It would mean in the month where you don't have enough money because maybe parents didn't pay or donor funds haven't come through, it means your cash flow is low and tracking it becomes difficult and you have to think. So in as much as we want to get donor funds and in as much as we want to manage that we don't overspend as we scale, we always have to think, what is the implication of what we're doing on cash flow? Will we be able to always pay the people? Do we have the right contracts with our teachers that we are able to manage the amount of cash we have? And I think at this point, it's useful to share that the challenge around cash flow has become such that many are looking to things like micro entrepreneurship or social franchising because it mitigates some of and helps manage some of the cash flow risk. So the question I'd like to put to the forum is as follows. What is not in an income statement? So I've talked about what's in an income statement. What is not in an income statement? And once again, we'll just go around the room. Does anyone have any ideas what's not in an income statement? Samuel?
I think our assets are not recorded in our income statements.
Sorry, can you repeat that? I just missed that.
Saying that in the income statement, we don't see our assets in the income statement.
True. Okay, anything else that anyone can think of?
Yes, I see we don't have any projections in the
Okay.
income statement.
Yeah. Okay, so because we don't have a lot of time, but the typical things which you don't have in an income statement is your forecasted plan. The income statement is your actual as is the income statement, your reality. Okay. It doesn't have budgets. It also doesn't necessarily show you where you've had volatility. Okay. In your income. It just shows you your actual, and it doesn't plan or create, say to you, you've got extra money. With that extra money, you plan to invest in this and that area. Okay, so that's typically the income statement. What it's not. Okay, so if we think about that, we want to take some time understanding the template that was shared with you, because being able to develop your income statement outside a system, okay, if you happen to use a system, is very powerful, because then what you put into your system is something you understand and can manage. Okay. So if we think about an income statement, the one in your in the toolkit has 4 levels or variables that we look at. The 4 variables that we look at, the 4 steps that we look at in the income statement. Can anyone remember any one of the steps in no particular order? Can anyone remember any of the steps? Or you can even look now and see what the steps are. Okay, I'm going to help you guys out because I want to make sure that we get some sense of understanding our actual income statement that we have, because the tool is extremely powerful. So the first one is assumptions. Everything in your income statement, in your financial planning, everything rises and falls on, did you assume correctly, especially in an evolving environment. After we make assumptions, we consolidate. We get a sense, or we get a picture of those assumptions we made in our plan. What do they mean? Do they put us in a situation where we've made money, lost money? Do they put us in a situation where we have enough to do what we need to do? And then the proportion analysis is what we will then use to determine what do we need to change. And then lastly, what is key information? Because as you go through this process, you will realize that there's information you understand, but you may not understand it well enough. Therefore, you need to still investigate further and understand better. Okay, so moving on, we're going to unpack each of these 4 steps. I just want to, not to single anyone out, but more to get a sense of how much of the template that was shared we understand. Can we just have a show of hands of who looked at the toolkit's financial planning tool? The one that comes, the income statement projection tool that would have been shared by Priyanka, or it's already in the toolkit and you've had some exposure to it. You can either put up your hand or Kadim, yes?
Yeah, I went through and also did a small exercise preparing simple forecasting and preparing the budget on the tool you shared. Okay.
Anyone else worked with the tool? Who's seeing it for the first time? Even if you're seeing it for the first time, you haven't had an opportunity to review it. I just want to get some sense, because that will help us work out the speed at which we go through the next sort of section. The problem with silence is it allows me to assume the speed, and that's not necessarily a good thing because some of us might be left behind. Any other comments? Yes, Imani.
Yes, I took time to brush through it, though not into detail, but yes, I went through it, and
Okay.
sure, it's a good document.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to make the assumption because I think some of you are nervous about
Hello.
saying, yes,
Hello.
Joe? Yes, Joe?
Yes. Good afternoon from my side. Sorry, I just joined the session today. I do have access to the tool you are talking about. I don't know if it can be shared with me so that I'll equally have access to it and maybe do some exercise as you are suggesting.
Okay, perfect. Priyanka will share it on the chat with the team for today, and then we'll just make sure that even in the post-coms, we will share it again with you so you know. But what we want to talk through the structure of the tool. So if you look where my cursor is moving, you've got 4 tabs at the bottom of the tool. The first one is how to use it, then assumptions, consolidation, proportion analysis, and key information to validate. The how to use it explains there's a color coding in the tool. There's the green, and then there's the gray. Now, what's important to understand about this tool is that the page that you and I are supposed to complete is basically under assumptions. We complete assumptions, and then the way the financial planning tool is designed, it then has equations that work out the rest. Okay. So it's important to understand that the bit we fill in is the first tab, and then the equations work out the rest, but that's all explained on the how to use. So if we go through each section and we look at assumptions, the assumptions tab, the first part about reach. Now, what's important about this tool is that when you look at this income statement projection, it is set up so that in our world, in the way we think. So when you get a financial system, normally the financial system is set up in a standard way. The work we do is always about how many people are we going to reach? How much revenue do we need to do that? What are the costs of the way our operating model? What are the other programs that we offer that have a cost associated with them? Who is helping us? Like, how are we as an organization organized in terms of what is our team and the cost of our team? And then what's required, what investments and things do we need? So at the end of the day, it's structured in a way for our organization and our NPO work. So when you talk about reach, you're talking about the number of students you have currently. And because we're talking about financial planning for the future, a future where we plan to have more impact, we want to know after 5 years how many students we'll be servicing. Then under revenue, it's about what are our revenue sources? Some of them may be donors, but there's also other revenue sources. We have caregivers and parents that may contribute. We might have the community, which isn't really a donor as such, but from time to time, people in the community contribute and help us. And then we want to understand for the work we do, what are our costs? Our costs would range from the building, like if you're paying rent, to any thing you have in your school that costs money. Okay, so your tools, the teachers that need to be paid, all of those things are costs. The materials are costs. Then we look at we all have more than one program, generally speaking, or we have things that we do to support our main work. And we need to understand the cost of those things. So the setup of the tool prompts you to have certain questions there or certain points there. And these points are not to say every organization should have an answer to this point, but it's just to say, as to prompt you to say, have I thought of X? Have I thought of Y? And then as overheads, it's about what are those overheads, which are the role typically of the organization. The organization's role is to implement. And often we forget to add the costs of our work and those of us who are doing the work. So this allows us to include our costs, and our cost becomes part of the base cost of the organization, because without us at the center who are doing the work, there is no organization. And then what costs are associated with long-term investments. So with this in mind, I'm going to ask you a question around assumptions. Is if you can think about your program, and it's useful at this point to write down a few things. If you were projecting 3 and 5 years ahead, what do you feel would be the hardest thing to estimate? Does anyone have one thing they can mention that would be hard to estimate? Or what information do you need that you currently don't have, but would make you more comfortable if you had it in trusting the assumption that you've made, or to make the assumption?
Yeah,
We just need
could I?
Yeah, sure, Imani.
Yes, thanks. One of it is around the cost of living adjustments. That is in staffing. That one we could not easily project, and also issues around government policies and deductions, which usually change. And then the taxation that happens to service providers, that is also, and tax, that is also not easy to project within a 3 to 5 year period. Thank you, and over to you.
Thank you so much. Isaac, I see you unmuted.
Thank you so much, Sen. I concur with Imani. For instance, here in Kenya, we have been facing challenges in taxation, where there is part where employer needs to merge with the one for employee. For example, we have housing levy, we have the national social security fund. So it is not predictable because it has been rising. It was at first it was 200 Kenya shillings, employer 200, then the employee. But as of now, you see it is Kenya shillings 4,320 from each part. So taxation has become a bit tough in our country. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bakura?
Yes, thank you so much. I just want to add one thing on what my colleague have raised. You know, in South Sudan, we have a challenge, especially when you talk about rent. In a rent, you know, most of people in South Sudan, they are looking at a dollar, and the rate of the dollar in South Sudan is not stable. So sometimes you can budget this year, reaching just 2 months to come, everything change. So the rate of the hard currency is making things very difficult. So it is not even sure to know how much money you can put so that it can help you up to next year. So it is very difficult.
How do you manage that at the moment? Do you have a way you manage it at the moment, which works partially and probably doesn't work as much as you would like it to work?
Yes, and this is money. From our side, there's always a cost of living adjustment that happens every year from the employer side. But some of these risks are not easily mitigated and managed, especially the risk that happened in 2019 over through 2022, the COVID-19. So some of those are hard to predict and hard to mitigate, but hopefully we'll find a solution one day.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. If we think about the assumptions, so what we need to assume is that our environment is volatile. And so when you think about the adjustments of salaries or income, we have to make assumptions based on historical behavior of government or whatever guideline guides our industry in our context, and say for the last year we've seen high inflation and we have to project the inflation being high. However, what financial planning is about, it's about being comfortable with your assumptions on this day and understanding that the elements of your planning which are volatile, I would say, you have an allowance to review twice a year or quarterly, whatever is suitable for you and relevant for your organization. But it's not reviewing everything. It's reviewing just those elements you feel are volatile. So when we look at the consolidation, what happens is we take the assumptions that we put in around reach, around our costs, and all of those things. And this page or sheet 3 of the template self-populates. And all the gray will be populated for us and generate a result. And the result is, it's based on our assumptions, what costs what as a percentage of total. So you'll see for here, total revenue is 2.3. The percentage increase or the percentage of operating costs is 6. The operating cost value, the percentage of overhead. So it's always worked out for us. This gives us a guide on what do we need to look at more closely and are we comfortable with the way this is? And ultimately, the whole objective, because we're looking to scale, the whole objective is to get to a cost per child or a view of our planning at a cost per child or a cost per participant, depending on what your particular program looks at. Now, remember I said with scale, the assumption is as you have more, the costs reduce. And that's the difference between scale and expansion. And if you look here, you start with $1.8 and it goes down to $1.51. Okay, so this is a projection, but this adjustment and transition is based on the information that you put under assumptions. Why assumptions are important also is that when there's a fundamental change, like let's take the COVID issue, a fundamental change in your operating environment, you can look at the assumptions that, we made these assumptions, we assumed 1, 2, 3, in the absence of this significant challenge. And therefore, which assumptions do we need to change? When you change the assumptions, you should go back to changing the financial forecast because you've changed key assumptions. So if we think about consolidation, are there parts of your program that feel most financially visible over others opposed to numbers? So are there parts of your program? So if you think about this results page, are there parts of your specific program, whether it's reach, whether it's all costs, things which are more visible and others that are less visible? Or we are less aware of what they are or what they mean? I don't see anyone unmuting. Is my question clear? Does everyone understand the question?
Yes, please pardon.
Okay. Let's hear from someone else. Samuel, do you have a thought? Or Gloria, would you like to share anything about maybe something in your financial? Remember, our organizations are all at different stages. But if you think about your organization and you would see the results, is there anything in the results, whether it's the cost to do something that's not obvious, or you haven't been able to collect the information that you know exactly what it is, or you have a better understanding of it? Okay, Gloria, you're muted. I don't know if you're trying to speak, or anyone else who would like to share anything that is invisible to them and you'd like to understand deeper or be able to know what it is. Okay, I'm going to move on because time is ticking. Let's see. And then your proportion analysis, what it then says, proportion analysis looks only at the distribution of our costs. So it then tells us to run our school, 69%, or in this particular example, just 69% of our costs relate to running the school. Staff costs, facilities, materials, and meals. Other programs are 15%, and then overheads, which are part of the head office and so forth, are 16%. What we understand, because we're planning to scale, although the cost per child drops, what you see is that the total cost increases as a percentage. So what is important to note is that we know that as you scale, there are costs that will increase as a percentage of your revenue, such as operating costs. However, overhead costs, which is the cost for the central office and anything else associated with that, if you're scaling in the right way, you should see a reduction in those costs. And then you may find over time there might be other programs that you need to add to augment the impact. Then that could potentially increase. But at a principal level, your overhead costs should be reducing while your operating costs can go up, but your cost per child or your cost per beneficiary needs to reduce. Now, if we think about that, go to the next question. Do you know what the main drivers of your costs or income in your organization are? And are those aligned with your strategy? Can anyone comment on that? Do you know what your costs are, and are they aligned with your strategy?
Yes, from us,
yes,
we know the many drivers to some of the most expenses we incur from the center, and even the income, because now the financial reports show them and we are able to align them accordingly as we are prioritizing the strategies.
Wonderful. Anyone else like to share? So I don't see any other hands or anything, but I think the important thing is the importance of this proportional analysis and understanding your cost drivers is because when you scale, there are those things that drive your cost the most and those things that should drive them less. And you need to be clear what those are and what those aren't. Because if I have a strategy to impact more children, my cost driver should not be the cost of more children. I should find a way to impact more children at a lower cost. But you need to understand if that's your strategy is to impact more children, or if your strategy is to say, teach more practitioners to be able to do what they do. Then the driver of your cost of setting up sites for learning or whatever it is would be different. Okay. So key information then allows us to say, based on our proportion analysis, what are the key pieces of information that we need to understand better? And often this is the point where we find that finding more information will help us better understand our strategy and make strategic decisions. So I might start wanting to expand my program, wanting to educate all centers and other teachers that are not part of my organization or network to be better, or I might want to do children. Then I discover, as I've done the financial planning, that actually to do both is probably going to be more complex than it needs to be. I therefore will focus more on the children or more on enabling the practitioners. But this information gap allows me to make those kind of choices and decisions. Is there anyone online who's had any area in their experience that they've needed to, that they feel they need to understand better, get more information about, or validate? Or are we feeling that we have enough information? Everyone's very quiet at the moment, so I'm taking that we have enough information as being or we think we have enough information, whichever one it is. Okay, so Isaac is comfortable with the information they have. Is there anyone who wishes they had more information? And if so, what would it be on? Or what would be that area that you'd like to understand better? Okay, so there's no one feeling they need to understand something better in terms of information gaps in the income statement. That's great news, because it means we're able to use this tool more effectively. And we are lucky to be operating in environments where we have a lot of information. So on that note, what would be useful is that we start thinking about how do you build an income statement? And we want to use an example which is generic insofar that all of us who are looking to scale will have elements of this in our organization somehow. But we wanted to take an opportunity just to think through these various steps of the income statement through a case study. And what I am thinking in terms of this is we thought that let's look at how do we improve the assets we already have, or utilization of the assets we already have. So I'm going to ask Priyanka to lead the discussion on the context that we created to try and illustrate for us to think of what are the things we really need to understand about how we do financial planning and the income statement. Over to you, Priyanka.
Thanks, Anne. Yeah, so this is really a hypothetical case study, but it's kind of derived from even some of the feedback and revenue strategies we've been hearing about from the past sessions. So this is very much sort of for practice. So what we have is a ECD center that we're calling Bright Star that works in a emergency affected community. We can maybe assume it works in an urban context for the sake of simplicity for our discussion. In our center, we have about 50 children that are enrolled, and the fee per child is about $5 per month. We have 2 teachers who are on fixed salaries, so we can think about sort of whatever might be relevant for your context in terms of salaries. And the center currently only runs in the morning, leaving the space to be open for use in sort of the second half of the day. So there are opportunities to be able to use the center as a second sort of source of income, and the rent and staff costs for this will be fixed. So we thought it'd be good for all of us to maybe just go to the income statement that I put on the chat earlier, and if we can download that and maybe just try to think through some of the assumptions for this particular scenario. Maybe we only have 15 minutes left, Sunny. So how do you want to do that? Should we maybe take 5 minutes to just try and take a quick stab and then come back and talk a bit about interpretation?
Yeah, I think we should take 5 minutes, because remember, here we're just trying to assist the learning process. Leaving here, we will have to unpack and develop our own financial planning income statements further. Okay, is everyone comfortable with that? That we take, or maybe we can go through each element. So the other way is to go through each element together and just see what we can answer the big buckets on the income statement. So if we think about reach, what would we what do we think about reach when we have 50 children enrolled, 2 teachers? Is that something? Yeah, so I think we can think about it in those 2 ways. I don't know what people would prefer, but we need a bit of guidance. Has anyone got a way they prefer to do this? Because I wouldn't want us to break away and then we don't really come back. I would rather we sit here and work together on it. So if we think of this and we go to the income statement, if you can just open the income statement that was shared, and maybe I'm sharing the screen here, so maybe we can open that, and then just, the first section was on reach. Does anyone have an idea of how reach would evolve over the years? Sorry. When it comes to Bright Star ECD, low income, 50 children, it's a high child to teacher ratio of 25. And from 1 o'clock, the venue is open for other use. So can we think of the things which potentially in the next years we could use the facility for after 1 p.m. So between say 2 and 5, we use the facility for something. What would be those things? Has anyone got an idea? Okay, anyone can speak. Joe, do you have any idea? Or even similar to your environment? If you happen to have idle, yes, Daniel.
Yeah, now from our side, our center will also have a building and it's always free in the afternoon. So I'm here with my colleague and we are thinking maybe we can add something which can generate income to the building as well. An example, like this side, Marcus, we run these language classes. So we can also take a cohort to the center where we can schedule classes learning from maybe 2 to 4, since these are 2-hour classes, and this can generate an extra income for the center. So that the building is in use even beyond the hours when learners go back home. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have another potential use for the center or the idle space? Yes, Bakura?
Yeah, thank you so much. In our side, the school normally close around 12 to 1. And what we are doing in the school in the evening, we have what we call adultery school. There are some people who are over age and they can't go to school and they sit with those small children in the school. So we have even developed a program for voluntary learning to them, just to help them at least to know how to read and write. So they are also benefiting, they are also using the school in the evening times. So now, but we have realized that in around the refugees camp, there are some companies who are planning like to give a vocational training, tailoring, and other things. So we are trying to see if possible we can have a discussion with them, and if they need a venue, we can also see how we can share and also discuss with them to see what will be their contribution for the schools and for the maintenance and the other things also. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because I think there are 2 steps. The first one is to know when the space is not being utilized. And then you find something for the space, whatever that may be. Then the second is the opportunity of how can that be funded? Will the beneficiaries pay for themselves or will you find other funding? Imani, I saw your hand was up. I don't know, you put it down?
Yeah, it aligns with what some of my colleagues have said. Leasing out the facility for probably some of the spaces are owned by church.
Yes.
For example, Akidogo School. And the space is now leased out for church gatherings, which contribute to revenue to the institution. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. I think if I was to ask a question, are all of you recovering money for the unutilized space? Or at the moment you found something to use it for, but you haven't recovered any financial contribution for its usage?
I will start. For us, the space is just there. It's not used. We are not earning anything from it. We are just planning on how to start being productive. Thank you.
Okay. Are you not earning from it because you're just starting, or because you've tried to approach the community and they're not interested in, they feel they should be offered for free?
Oh, like this site at
Yes.
office, we have already been conducting these adult classes, but now we
Yes.
feel like if we transfer the same to the space which is at the center,
Yeah.
you can also enroll and get students, since these places are totally different.
Okay. Thank you, Daniel. Bakura, you're going to say something?
Yeah, our case, we are operating within the refugees camp, and this land was given by the government to support the refugee children we have, and we even build the school with the parent together. So it is very difficult for us to make it for income or other things, because it is made to support the vulnerable people. Because if we enter in other business, the government will ask a lot of questions, and which will also expose us.
So in that case, I think this is a great example. I would ask the question to colleagues. If you were in Bakura's situation, what options would they have, or they could consider, to help them recover the cost of the work that they are doing? Does anyone have any idea that we can share with them that has worked in your environment?
I'm just thinking. I don't know whether this will make sense. I'm thinking of a cyberspace where people just come and do ICT work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is one way to look at it. Thank you.
Yeah. Priyanka, do you have anything you'd like to add to this discussion?
No, I think it's an important sort of like problem to talk about, because yeah, I think and I don't know if it's a country specific regulation and in sort of host countries or refugee countries, because I think in some contexts people are able to monetize or generate sort of some income from assets, and in other maybe regions that's not possible. Yeah, but I think if we come across some sort of innovations to share, we'll definitely kind of share them with you. But even if there are sort of learnings that you have around potential ways or solutions around this, would love to kind of even brainstorm some of them, even if you don't have sort of like a fully fleshed out solution at this stage.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. And I think, yes, Imani.
Yeah, that's in line with what Priyanka said, but also what my friend also said, that they can be used as ICT centers. I think that is a really great innovation as a TVET center, whereby young mothers now can come in and get support, and for the caregivers to also get some training in terms of tailoring or any other short course TVET course. It's something that we could look into.
Thank you very much. And I think there's two things. many of us are in environments where either by virtue of our registration as an organization, government doesn't allow us to monetize certain things, right? They assume that we can just give them an increase. This is obviously not practical because unfortunately many things in life cost money. And those of us doing this work also have to live. And so if you are in an environment that is constrained in any sort of way, what is very important is that the muscle your organization needs to build is partnership muscle. Because it then means you've got the space, you have the people in terms of beneficiaries, but you need partners who can come in and deliver at the reduced cost. So if we use the example of ICT, for instance, wonderful idea, but we know that in an environment like the one Bakura referred to, charging the people would be something you're not allowed to do because of the space is provided. Who can we partner with in the community, in the broader company? And this is where we start to look for corporates, because corporates really, really want to uplift people. And they have an obligation to use some of their funds for this type of work. So how do we get partners who will either come with a skill or come with a resource? That means we don't incur the cost. So I think this is a good place to stop our session for today, is that when you look at your income statement, in as much as you need to put in the absolute cost for year one, when you look at year 5, if you assume we've got a partner providing this core skill, then you can assume as we are able to help more people, the costs go down, because the costs are not going to be our costs, but our partner is going to bring those things to the table, and therefore they will incur the cost. So I just want to go to our worksheet for
Sen, could I speak, please, as you get it up?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm also thinking on using these centers for, as I said earlier, around young mothers and also caregivers, spaces for VSLA, that is saving and table banking, where they come and do things around there. I think it's an innovation that also we could look into in terms of generating more income. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think what's important is that we look at these additional ways to make money. It doesn't always mean the money will come to the organization in absolute terms, but it means you can have greater impact with others providing the resources, if I can put it that way, from a money perspective, which then enhances your impact. So if we think about what we want to do next time and thinking about everything, we went a bit slower in today's session because the fundamentals are key and the thinking is key. So for you to be able to track your financial information and manage it, you need to have developed it properly. You can't track and manage something that is weak in its development and design. So the ask between now and the next session, which is in 2 weeks' time, if I'm not mistaken, is that you take your income statement and you choose either an element of your organization or your total organization, but you choose the main thing you want to scale, whatever that is, whether it's you or the main thing you want to use to generate revenue. So for example, if we go back to the asset utilization, we currently have 50 children. Maybe in year 5, we want to have 150 children, which means we might have 2 or 3 sites, but now we still finish at 1 o'clock. We have extra space. So when you think about what you can do, think about those extra elements that you can add to. So you don't have to think about your whole organization, because for Priyanka and I, what's quite important is that we help make sure that you understand the design of the template and are able to understand how you can use it effectively, rather than making sure that everything is perfect in your total organization. But that in itself will give you an idea of what type of partnerships should you find. Those partnerships, how should you structure them if your partner is bringing something to the table? Or if it's a donation, how do we work with donors that are going to help us generate income to support X, and what needs to be done? And then as a result, I'm hoping that you will come with key information, and that key information need not be answers to everything. It needs to be the questions, the things that are still gaps, so that we can use that to think about. And then when you think about that area, what are the 3 areas that you can track, or the 3 things in this space that you feel you can monitor, manage, and track? Does that make sense? Or you need to be able to monitor, manage, and track. Not that you already are, you need to be able to. So in the next 2 weeks, this is going to be the working. I would encourage all of you to make sure you have a copy. We will share a copy of the toolkit and the template again. We'll also make sure that if you don't understand the sheet of assumptions and so forth, please do email us between these sessions, because we'd hate to find that you haven't had an opportunity to apply your thinking to the work at hand, because you didn't have answers to some certain questions. So we are available for emails and so forth. And I think those emails, etc., will guide us on if we need to have a chat or whatever the case may be. Okay. I'll just hand over to Priyanka to close us out.
Thank you. I've just launched a poll. Similar questions as last time, just feedback is helpful. Yeah, but like Sane said, if there is any difficulty that you face in completing any of these tasks, pre-works, please let us know. And we're also kind of thinking of building out some case studies based on some of the innovations that you have highlighted in this session, also in the previous session, some of the challenges that you have raised, and maybe some key considerations to think through some of those challenges. So if you're interested in kind of talking a little bit more in detail, because I think in these sessions we kind of touch upon a lot of these themes, but if you have a innovative sort of solution or a particular challenge that you're facing around which you'd like to brainstorm solutions, please reach out to me. We're in the process of kind of thinking through what these case studies could look like, which potential solutions can we showcase. So if you're interested in that, please do reach out. Right now, we're thinking a little bit about asset utilization. In the last session, we spoke about revolving grant fund and phase subsidy and cost recovery associated with that. I think today I learned a little bit about just partnerships and leveraging the strength of that in situations and contexts where we're not able to monetize sort of the assets by themselves. So lots of opportunities for us to talk through some of those things. Yeah, so if that sparks an idea or that's an interest area for you, please do write to me, and I'll be happy to set up a separate call to deep dive into some of those pieces. But thank you so much for joining us and for such an engaging discussion. I don't think I realized where an hour and a half just went by. So thank you so much for your enthusiastic participation, and we hope you'll come back and join us for the final session before we jump into the peer learning and the advisory session associated with that. Thank you so much. Have a lovely rest of the week, and we'll see you in a couple of days again. Thank you.